what I saw a lot with my beginning artists when I was teaching were these. These are what I call lollipop trees. And that, to me, is a big no-no because you're kind of turning your brain off when you make a lollipop tree like that. And also, it looks more like a water tower than a tree. Another tree that I saw a lot was these for evergreens, and I think that's fine. It's better than the lollipop, but it's still kind of a symbol of a tree. And so I'm going to make something that's a little bit more tree-like. When you actually go out into nature, you see that most trees start off a little thicker at the bottom, and they slowly get thinner. It's very slow. They get thinner as you go up from the ground. The ground has all these roots happening, and so it starts off, the trunk is at its widest point, and then it slowly gets thinner, and then it branches off. And the branches also start thick and get thin. So like there's one branch, it's starting thick and getting thin and branching out. And every little branch starts a little bit thick and gets thin. And you can really fill out the whole thing with thick and thin branches. Another issue I see a lot with those who are just starting out is they'll have a trunk, and then out of that trunk come all of the branches. I see that happen pretty often. Instead, the branches don't all come out at the same spot. Some come out down low, some come out high. The key to making trees, believable trees, is to make them really vary. They kind of have a life of their own. They're living things that, some of the branches kind of meander, some are a little bit straighter. You see some branches kind of breaking off. If you really want to draw trees well, it's so good to be an observer of the nature you see around you. And spend some time really looking. What do you see in your trees? Another thing that I always try to do is to have my branches overlapping each other. That's always wise. Okay, so that's your typical tree trunk and branches. I'm going to quick erase that. You don't have to. You can flip to a different sheet of paper or just keep working on that. For coniferous, for pine trees and evergreens, they are not, in real life, they aren't these kind of robotic shark teeth shapes. That works for doodling a tree, but if you make an actual believable tree, it's really good to have it kind of follows that triangle shape, but it does have that nice variety. So just kind of letting that line dance as it gets wider and wider. Here's some little branch things happening. And then a trunk down the bottom. Okay, now we're going to do our actual tree. And thank you to all of you who joined. It's great to see some familiar names and some not so familiar names. Okay, we're going to start with our ent. I'm going to, as I always do, I start with the big basic shapes. So I'm going to make kind of a trunk shape toward the middle of my paper. What you see on your screen represents a sheet of paper. So if you make sure you leave some space down low here for kind of what will be roots or legs for our tree, our living tree. And make sure you give it a little bit of a curve. The wonderful thing about this project is that every tree is going to be different from others. So, you know, some of your drawings will look different from mine, and your drawings will look different from each other, and that's actually a good thing. I don't want you guys to just straight up copy what I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is just kind of giving my tree some kind of lumps and bumps. We want it to feel like it's been in the forest for centuries. So it's old and lumpy. And we want to have a few branches coming out at different places. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to have some branches with some real character. So they're going to have kind of a, kind of lumpy shape to them, but they do follow that rule of thick at the bottom and slowly getting thinner as we go out. We'll worry about leaves later. For now, just a few branches coming out and breaking off into different twigs and stuff. And we're going to make it look like the trunk comes up. And then up here, maybe it breaks into another branch. Well, hey, Cole Morgan. So you can see this one, it's a lumpy old branch, but it's still following that thick to thin rule. Maybe there's another smaller branch peeking out here, thick to thin. And then, I don't know, maybe a branch comes up and then turns a corner. And just kind of meanders along. I just let that line dance, just so long as I have the thick to thin sort of thing happening with my tree. Hey, Kerners. Okay, another little branch. So just a few branches, random here and there. It's really important that your branches don't all look the exact same. And I feel little minor limbs coming out from there. Okay. It's always good to have maybe a branch or two overlapping each other. So maybe this one, is kind of the dominant branch, and it kind of overlaps this other one. Maybe there's a branch that you see just part of that kind of disappears from view back behind the tree. Trees are a great way to practice overlapping different things. Hi, Jackie and Jen. Okay, so if I were to stop there, it'd look like a big, dead, old oak tree. Now I want to start bringing it to life. I'm going to start, just to immediately jump into some character, I want to get a nose limb. So I'm going to start with kind of a half circle there. That represents where your nose butts up against like your cheek area. The kind of flap of skin of the nose that's above your nostril. And that half circle, I'm going to take the bottom part of that circle and I'm going to come out into kind of a tree limb. And then I'm not going to go back here, although I suppose I could. Instead, I'm going to go up like this, so it looks like the bridge of a nose. But this is a tree creature, and so I'm going to, give it some kind of bark-like texture on it. Okay. Okay, and then I think I'll go into the eyes next. Remember, this, at least in my case, I'm going to try to make this tree look and feel very old. And so I want to give it these kind of droopy hangdog eyes. He's been sitting around the forest for a long time. So that's just like to make that, it's just like a little, part of a smiley face. The smile of a smiley face with a flat line on top, and then another little loop down. Pretty simple way to make kind of a bored or really old eye. And then down below that eye, I'm going to add another little curve as if he's got these bags under his eyes. And then I'm going to do the same over here, the kind of smiley face curve, the sort of flat line on top, and then the iris and pupil, and of course the bag under it. And maybe this tree has some mossy eyebrows, and I notice in myself, when I look in the mirror, the older I get, the bushier my eyebrows appear. For some reason, that doesn't seem to happen to my wife, but my own eyebrows get bushier as I get old. So if you want to add some mossy eyebrows, you go for it. Maybe he has a mossy unibrow. Ain't nothing wrong with unibrows, folks. Okay. And let's see. So there's this kind of almost a little bit sad. He's lived through a lot of forest fires and he's kind of weary. I'm going to have some crow's feet coming out. Those are just wrinkles at the corner of your eyes. If you have your parents smile for you, you might see these wrinkles. They're just wee little lines coming out from the corner. It just makes it look wrinkled. Or in his case, like there's kind of folds in the bark there. And for his mouth, there's a ton of things you can do with the mouth. In my case, I'm going to give him just kind of a little kind of weird smile. And to really help make him look old, I'm going to add this line that starts where the nose comes up against the face. And it comes down and kind of shows the shape of that cheek. It's just a little extra line that connects the nose and the mouth. I'm going to do the same over on the other side, except it's, some of it's kind of hidden from view by the nose. And to really make this old tree look old, I'm going to add a couple kind of wrinkly things happening in here. Okay, old tree. All right, now I'm going to let's draw arms next. So even when we're drawing like a fantastical creature, it's really good to think about that how the arms bend and also making it look tree-like. And so I'm going to make a cross between a human arm and a tree limb. So it's going to start thick up here, and it's going to get thinner as it works its way toward the fingertips. But it's also going to bend where a human arm bends. So there's going to be an elbow there. It's going to bend a little bit. And it's slowly getting thinner into kind of a hand. And then some smaller twigs that kind of form the fingers. And you can give them as many or as few fingers as you want. Maybe if you don't feel like drawing an arm, you can have an arm look like it was soft by a lumberjack or something. And we're going to have the other arm kind of coming out, across the way. Maybe this arm's doing something different. Maybe this arm is holding out his hand like he's waiting for leaves to grow on it, or maybe a bird is going to rest in there. There's different things you can do with that. Okay, and I'm going to have my tree sort of have legs so it can move around. But it ends in kind of roots happening down at the bottom. And we want to give them kind of sort of knee things happening. The other leg is just going to go back behind here. And root things happening. I'll thicken that leg. There we go. Right now I'm adding just some little textural things happening. The cool thing about trees is it's really, it's hard to screw up. The texture thing, I'm just kind of letting my stylus, in my case, your pencil, letting it dance across the surface and kind of show some barky things happening. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no magic. It's just little bark textural things happening that make it feel like it's got some variation in low points and high points. You can, at the same time as you're adding some of that texture, you can also think about lighting. So maybe, some areas are facing away from the light source. And so, maybe this little hole here between the legs has some shadow down there where the light can't quite get it. Maybe the underside of the arm. You can kind of build up those textural lines and the shading all at once. Maybe his nose casts a little bit of shadow. You want to be careful with that because you don't want to make a Hitler mustache. That's something I'm always kind of careful not to do. Sometimes it's good to have a little extra limb things happening here and there. Now I'm going to go up into the foliage. Leaf foliage can look a whole lot different on different types of trees. In this case, it's going to be an old oak tree. I'm not going to spend time drawing every single leaf. Instead, I'm going to use, if I were going to mess with a pencil, I would use kind of the side of the pencil lead and make a whole bunch of just little dancing marks that kind of show the basic shape of the leafy area. Now, it's really important that it doesn't look symmetrical. This is just kind of what I would call a dancing line, very irregular line. It covers up some branches, and some branches it's going to go behind. Do it quick. Oh. Let's see. make your marks quick so you don't overthink it. Because if you spend too much time thinking about it, it's going to look too controlled. So, so right now I'm just kind of drawing from the shoulder. And really make that irregular shape. We don't want it to feel like a lollipop tree. So you have some branches stick out farther, some branches not quite as far. You have some leaves that are kind of all alone. And then use the side of your head to kind of shade it lightly in so that there's enough variation happening. And generally, my shading is going to be darker on the bottom side of the foliage and get lighter as it goes up. So a little bit heavier shading down the bottom, a little bit lighter at the top. So lots of little texture marks. And it might take a little time to build that up. It's the most exciting part of the drawing. But if you can really lean that and take a little time to make a little squiggly marks. Now with those, when I was first starting with trees, I would make a lot of these type of marks. And that kind of takes away from the real look of the leaves. It starts to look more like curly hair. Instead, you kind of lift your pencil off the paper a little bit while making the marks so that the leaves aren't all connected to each other. Especially as you kind of finish up the foliage area. If you can kind of what's called stipple, then you can really make it feel like it's a leafy group of leaves, especially along the edge. If you can have some individual leaves happening. Erase curly hair over here. And I'm going to finish up my tree by just kind of working in some more textures, bark, and just kind of building that up. This bark texture can really tell a lot about that surface. It's not random marks necessarily, because you can use that texture to kind of show the curve of the tree. Trees aren't just flat shapes, they curve around the trunk, and so you can use some extra of those textural lines to build up that curve. It's also kind of, if you think of the landscape around it, maybe a little bird or friend perching on a sand. There's a little owl there or something. Friend of the forest. Maybe he's looking down at the owl like, my buddy. Just adding some kind of rocks to finish it up. some grassy stuff, just rough little lines, textures.